you know, whether I'm putting a document up and a presentation, everybody wonders who's going to say yes or no. So I always ask Roland to do it. So if he doesn't turn up, could I ask you, can I nominate you as being my yes man to say that you can see it?
Of course you can, Tom. I owe you so many favours.
Okay, well, I think we'll make a start. One little bit of housekeeping. If you could put yourself on mute,
Sure.
that would be really good. So we've got no extra noise, and we'll go into the presentation. So this is all about creating a systems TNA, and I've called it Training Needs Analysis 101. And if you see anything with a 101 on, it tends to say that it's a basic, it's an intro, it's a starter. So I've got some things that I want to show you. I've tried to keep them simple, but I had to think about it this week, and I'm going to give you the simple stuff and show it to you, but I'm also going to give you a more complicated, more finished example as well. So hopefully that will satisfy people at both ends of the spectrum who like to see detail. So these are the objectives. Understand and use the key steps to deliver your training needs analysis. Know how to involve the right people, how to ask the right questions, how to use templates to record your data, and know how to document your findings, and defend the facts, and provide a summary and present your TNA. Now that's a lot in an hour, okay? So I'm going to try and keep it as streamlined as possible. So a quick hello. Some of you I know, some of you like Anu, I've never met before. So there are some new people. I run regular events every month or every couple of months. I'm a freelance trainer. I've been doing it for a long time. I used to work for Oracle, so I've done a lot of technical programming training, but the last 20 years has all been doing freelance training for applications, HR and financials, and building tailored training for particular clients. Things just to remind you that you may know of already. You might think you know nothing about TNAs, but actually you know more than you think. Some of you will have already created TNAs and done that. It might be also that you've attended a training course and wondered how it was put together because it went really well. You've attended a course and realized that you're on the wrong event. That happens all the time. And that could be down to a failure in the TNA. And you may have delivered a course that hit the mark perfectly because the right people were the right audience, were in the right room for the right course. Now, that doesn't happen by accident, okay? There is a kind of a method to it, which I'll be going through. Just again, a bit of networking, just to pop up. We have got some people from different organizations, Abcam, Aviva, who I'm currently working with. There is a company called PeopleSpark Solutions, who I've worked with before. And in fact, one of their members did a presentation with me on one of these events. Leeds Building Society, Anthony there, with some of his colleagues. We've got someone from the civil service, but he'll never tell me what his job is, so it must be hush hush, so I'm not quite sure. New Zealand Post, not quite sure how they found me, there you go. Fujitsu, Asima, Active Consulting, Melton IT, Creative Inc., GRC International, we've got someone from the NHS, Thames Water, Big Learning Company, Rise Learning, A2 Dominion Group, and also Fudge Learn. Now, there are probably other people, but I couldn't work out from your email or your LinkedIn which company you were from, so apologies for that. I've done my best. And Ariva as well. Okay, so first things first, you need a good strategy before you gather information. If you've never done a TNA and you want to have a go at it, there's a temptation to rush in and start asking people very specific niche questions. And by the time you're on day 2, you've forgotten who you've spoken to and what they said, and you've lost it, and you're going to have to start again, and you'll lose all credibility. So you need a strategy. I'm going to show you my strategy. You might do a completely different one, and that's perfectly okay. but whatever you do, have a strategy in mind. You must have an open mind. I've been tempted in the past, when I've done discrete work, to produce just the TNA, to write the TNA, so that the conclusion is they need me as a trainer to deliver the training and build it. That's really bad practice. It's unprofessional. People wouldn't appreciate it. You have to have a completely open mind and just present the facts. Do not stray from the TNA. I've been in situations where I've been on site with a client for 2 weeks, and the brief is to produce the TNA, and you get dragged into doing design, developing training materials, and also doing coaching and delivering training, during that time that you've got with the client. It's bad news because it's taking you away from doing the TNA, but also if you stray from the TNA, you may get involved and fire people up with their interest, and they might think they're going to get trained on something, and in fact they don't. The conclusion of the TNA is that they don't need the training, or it's too costly, or whatever. So I'm now absolutely scrupulous. I will not get into conversations with people about difficulties they've got with their current system and trying to help them out and fix it. You've got to keep to the TNA. Don't start delivering or designing or developing any training. Evidence and proof. If it's just you building the TNA for a client, the reason they want the TNA is they've got to solve a business problem, and someone is going to have to pay for it. And that typically means that someone reasonably high up in the company, it could be director level, could be board level, is going to have to sign it off. Now, what I've found anecdotally with dealing with people at that level is that they have not got the time to know everything. But in a meeting, what they'll do is they'll pick on one particular thing and they'll drill you on it, and they'll demand proof and evidence. And if you can't back up what you're saying in the TNA, then you've lost confidence with that person. So every single thing that you present, I would say present as a summary. Don't present spreadsheets with 1,000 rows in it. They won't like it. Present the summary, but you have to be able to back it up. And one really convenient way of doing that is to have your evidence in Excel, have it with filters so you can filter information and on the spot prove the point that you've made. As a final outcome, potentially offer 2 to 3 solutions. So if you offer one solution, it may be they don't like it, okay? And then you've kind of lost, or they disagree with your findings. It's a good idea to offer 2 or 3 solutions which give some flexibility and a different perspective, that they could side with, want to find out more information about. Don't just offer one thing. Data is powerful. If you record your findings in a notebook, that sort of works, but you can't extrapolate any data from that. So I'm going to promote using Excel to record the information that you get while you're doing the TNA, as well as Word documents. If you've got data, then you can do what ifs and actually, come up with some different solutions. Communicate your findings only with summaries when you're presenting it. It may be that it's taken you a month to write the TNA and you get a 20-minute slot on a meeting to actually present the findings. You have to have that summary data ready to go. Use appropriate terminology. If you're a trainer, you'll use training terms. If you're a technology person, you'll use technology terms. If you're presenting a TNA, like I said earlier, typically it's someone who's maybe a training manager or higher, and they're not in your world necessarily. You have to keep things pretty simple and understandable, or be willing to explain them. Adding extras. I'm very cheeky. For instance, I have a rule. If I go for an interview for a contract and I'm a freelancer and they offer me a certain day rate, I always ask for more. Doesn't matter what the day rate is. I think you've got to be cheeky. So adding extras in may be that you're saying, we could do this by using a certain technology, and that's going to cost you if you want to use it, but it's fantastic. Add extra things in that they can turn down. I think that's perfectly okay to do. Have a methodology, a training methodology in mind. Again, I don't think it matters what that methodology is, but you need to be able to argue your corner when it comes to why you've suggested a certain way of doing things. I like, Gagne's steps on learning, and that kind of guides some of the learning that I write. But unless you're in the training field, you'll never have heard of it. It won't mean anything to you. Big mistakes that you can make. Don't assume the technology will work. I've been involved in doing some training for a financial institution, and their network was so poor in their head office that they couldn't run e-learning. It just wouldn't work. It was stuttering and failing, and that network was not going to get fixed for another 2 or 3 years. They had other things to work on. So if you don't check out stuff like that, and check out the technology, and you're gunning in your TNA that everything's got to be e-learning, streaming, again, that's going to be a failure. Check what devices and operating systems the users are actually going to be using. If you're in the kind of systems world, you might get hooked into single sign-on issues where you create something and you want someone to use it, but they have to be logged in a certain way. They can't log into your system because of single sign-on. More to do with the training delivery than the TNA, but it's something to keep in mind. Don't ignore their current culture. They will have a way of doing it. They will have a training team. They will have a training manager. They will have a culture. They will have a training catalog. The reason they're probably getting you in is because they don't understand the new system, so they need help. But if you build a brand new LMS, it may be there already is one. Use that one. So find out about the current culture in the company. Overdoing the TNA, there's a great temptation to do the TNA, build course descriptions that go into nth detail about what you would deliver and how you would deliver it. I would draw back a little bit from that, keep it lightweight and general, because things will change and you could be wasting effort. Going beyond the scope, a big mistake I made with one client was I was doing a TNA. I was walking around the building chatting to people, and I met someone who I thought was involved in the finance team. Turned out that they were in the HR team, and it was using the same base. It was an Oracle system. And between the two of us, we got confused and thought that they were going to get new HR training because they'd never been trained properly to start with. It wasn't part of the brief for the TNA. So that caused me a problem which I had to solve. So I'm very conscious of that now. Don't go beyond the scope. And simple things, ignorance of shift patterns and locations. One TNA that I've seen was beautifully constructed, but when it came to actually do the training delivery, a big chunk of the people involved worked in factories and they worked 3 shifts. So the training had to be delivered through the night for, a third of them. That wasn't factored into the TNA, and that caused greater cost and caused a number of other logistical problems. So key steps. These are my 10 steps that I try and keep to. If you skip these steps, then you're kind of freewheeling and you may make mistakes. So first of all, understand the overall requirement. You need to get a sponsor and get the lead from them about what's really required. Create your own templates for recording things. I've got a very short memory. I can't remember a conversation from yesterday. If I don't write it down or type it up or put it somewhere, I'm going to forget. No matter how meaningful or true it is at the time, I'll lose it out of my head. So I have to document things. Get an introduction from the sponsor. If you start emailing people asking for meetings with them, and they've never heard of you, they don't know what this new system is, they're not motivated to respond to you. So get the push from the sponsor. Appoint a review team. Do this in advance before you do the TNA. Find out the people who need to be involved and document it. Ask the questions and record the responses. Use templates to record your data. So a big chunk of today is I'm going to come up with some examples of how you can do this, and I'll give you all of the templates to give you a good starting point. So we need to record things like courses, delegates, events, trainers even, and keep that as data. Oops, let's go back. Have the TNA reviewed. So you've already appointed reviewers, get them to review the TNA, summarize your findings, and then review the TNA again. And what we're desperately trying to do is avoid mistakes before we present and sell the TNA to the business. And finally, present the TNA. So I'll again go through some examples of how you could do this. So from a flowchart point of view, it's linear until we get to the review. So if you're asking people to review it, they're going to give you feedback. You need to go back in and update the data that you've recorded. You know, add extra things in, change things, whatever you need to do. Summarize it, review the TNA again. You'll get feedback, change it, review it, change it, review it, and only then present your findings. So that's the kind of the overview. Before we go into the detailed steps, any questions from anybody around that overview? No. Okay.
Tom, Tom, I have a question. It's Simon.
Sure. Hi, Simon.
At the risk of sounding very silly, I don't think I think we use the acronym TNA, but unless I missed that at the very beginning of this session, I don't think you actually explained what a TNA is.
Ah, right. Good point.
I don't know if that's a valid observation. And so whilst I know, whilst I've been a trainer for so long, I kind of instinctively know what I do. TNA, I can't immediately, you know, and I've seen many TNAs. I just needed you to set a little bit more context around that. That would be my comment. Great.
Thank you, Simon. Well, a TNA, training needs analysis, is essentially you'll be delivering a document or documents which are the results of you finding out for the business the gap from where they are now and where they need to be. And so from a systems perspective, this could be a new system or an upgrade to an existing software system that they've got, and identifying, you know, what the new tasks are that need training or updating, who needs training, how long it's going to take, and also your recommendations about approaches that you could take. This is where I said maybe 2 or 3 approaches would be good to actually communicate that to them. Yeah.
That's great. And how would that be different from a training plan?
Well, I think a training plan comes next. So a training plan would be, you've got the TNA signed off, and now it's go and do it. And that's when you're going to build the training plan, which for me would be a much more detailed training catalogue. So I'm going to show you a high level course description, which might come out of the TNA, but a training catalogue to me would be a full breakdown of that course, which would tell you topic by topic what the deliverables are. And that might be e-learning, might be a document, might be classroom training, you know, and the mechanics of how you're going to deliver that training. Also scheduling. There's no scheduling in a TNA. So we might say, for this course and this number of people, you need to run 12 events, and they're a day each, that's 12 days training. But we're not considering, you know, when we're going to do that or how we're going to do it. At that stage, it's still a recommendation. Yep. Okay, so thanks for the question, Simon. Step one then, understand the overall requirements. So I would say, do not assume you know what's required. Okay, you need to ask. Arrange a meeting with the sponsor. So actually meet the person. Key questions, you know, what's the current situation? Key objectives, the initial perspective on things. That's a really good question, because it may be they've already tried this and it's failed. They've gone live with a system, the training didn't work, and now they're trying to recover and do a better job. Sequence of events. Is this part of a bigger set of projects? You know, are we relying on something else being in place before we can do this? What comes immediately afterwards? So getting a big picture feel. Timing. You know, when do you think the training, if it went ahead, would actually happen? You know, is this dependent on a go live for the brand new system? You know, when's that going to be? What factors come into play? And also, how will we know if it's a success? How do you measure this? Because we need to do, you know, a post-course review of the whole piece of work to see if it was successful. Now, there's lots of other questions you can ask the sponsor, but a big suggestion I would say here is it's essential that you document this, gain the approval from the sponsor, and do it by email and specifically request approval of those notes. Okay, because this could come back to bite you if you miss something. Okay, they need to agree up front. Step 2, create your template for recording your findings. If you start emailing yourself after having meetings with people in the business, you know, your notes, it's sort of okay. You know, you can go back through your emails and you can pick through and get the information. But for me, it works much better if I've got a systematic way of doing it. So there's a few things here. You need a summary document as well as detailed spreadsheets. So I'll show you a summary document in a moment. Ask all of the questions in your summary document, even if you think they're irrelevant. And I've found that this is really worthwhile because you could be assuming things and missing a trick. Stick to your templates and add data findings as you go. And I'll have a look at an example. So Anthony, you're going to have to help me out in a minute, and we'll see if this document opens. Now, Anthony, can you see blank training needs analysis?
Yes, I can,
Great.
Tom.
Okay, so this is just a Word document. So this could be your starting point. So this is your big summary document. And I've got a version control on it. I've got a table of contents. But when I actually get into it, these are just headings. Okay, so overview, current situation, key objectives. So I'd be filling this in as I go. Key people involved in the quality assurance and sign off. So name the people who are signing things off and who are your reviewers. Okay, so we put it down in black and white and we add those in as we get agreement. Okay. So that's that first document, and I'll go through a completed one a little bit later on. Step 3, gather an introduction from your sponsor. So ask your sponsor to do a comms or an email or some kind of communication to say who you are and what you're doing. This will explain that you're going to be contacting and reaching out to people in the business to arrange meetings, and saves a lot of time, because people, if you don't do this, people won't know who you are or why you're doing it. And if the sponsor triggers these meetings, to be honest, people are more likely to attend. They're more likely to respond to your emails and actually come up with the goods. And the push needs to come from the top down, not from the bottom up. We might all think we're really important, but to be honest, software trainers are probably regarded as the least important people on a big project. So you need some weight behind you. Appoint your review team. I think I mentioned this already. So you need at least 2 or 3 people. These people will pick up on your mistakes. They can contribute with information that you're not aware of, so they'll fill in some of the gaps. You want them from different teams or different job roles, so they've got different perspectives. Have regular reviews with them, so keep going around that review cycle. And it makes you look professional and open as well. If you guard this TNA document and don't let anybody see it until the last moment, then you're creating a problem for yourself. So people that might be reviewers are people from the business, and they could be business analysts, project managers, key users. Make sure you put their names in and get agreement from them that they're willing to do it. Ask the questions and record the responses. So start at the top and work down. So if we were looking at an Oracle financials system, if I go to a data entry clerk and start there and ask them questions, they're probably not going to have the big picture. They're not going to have the visibility. So start from the top down, the sponsor, you know, and then maybe the next layer of management, and get the high level information. Use specific questionnaires for different roles. Look for the as is or to be documentation. So this is very kind of systems driven, but if it's a big software implementation, sometimes you get good documentation, sometimes it's terrible, but you will occasionally find good stuff where it says where we are now and where we need to be. Use questionnaire templates. So I've got 4 that I've mentioned on the slide pack. If I go back and I just open one of them, just as an example, this may seem overkill, but I've just got into the habit of doing this. I'll sit down for a meeting with, in this case, it's a test manager. I'll record the name, the date, and then I'll have key questions lined up for them. What are the roles and responsibilities? What process documentation is available? What test scripts are available? These can all feed into your training needs analysis. What can I have access to a test instance, you know, if it's a software system? So I'm not saying that these are the right questions for you, but having a plan of what you're going to ask before you get to the meeting and filling in the blanks will save you time. If you're not having a very good day, if you're not feeling well, being sparky and clever in meetings is really difficult. If you've got your questions laid out, you can feel terrible and still get through it and get the good information. So I've given, you know, I'll give you these. I've got some examples for team leaders, managers, business analysts, and they'll have different types of questions. Key documents that could help you. A test script catalogue, again, it depends what stage the project is at. There could be nothing at all, or it could be you've got a testing team who have written 1,000 scripts, and that is a massive clue for you about what things need to be trained out. So you need to work with the test manager to say, is there a test script catalogue? How complete is it? Does this have everything in it? Or are there undocumented things? Process maps, so you can work out the handoffs between different teams and the flow of information. And there may even be an end-to-end solution design document. Again, depends on what state the project's in. It could be that none of these exist. So your output from your question sessions and other materials that you can find on a project, I would call a task list. I'll show you what I mean in a moment. You might have different terminology for it or do it a different way, but somehow it would be good to actually show what you've recorded as key topics or tasks to go into your training. So I'll show you the spreadsheet in a moment, but after performing your interviews, you need to put this information somewhere. Record specific tasks too, and I've got this thing called the task matrix spreadsheet. So I'm going to open it. There we go. And Anthony, can you see a tasks page? Is that coming up?
Yes, it has, Tom.
Yeah, what I'll do is I'll zoom in a little bit as well. Now, this is a really super simple example. Okay, so I've done my questioning. I found out key tasks that need to be done, and I want to record them. So this is very Oracle specific. So forgive me for that if you're interested in different systems, but I've got a column for the module that the task is associated with. I've got the name of a task, such as create a journal, create a PO invoice, whatever it might be. I've got a course associated with it. So by this stage, I've already got an idea of a set of courses because I've spoken to the team leads, the managers, the users, and I've got those in my spreadsheet. Now, these are lookups. There's another tab there with all my courses in. So as I add more tasks, I can just pick, that from a list. What I've also got is 3 extra columns here. Completed. Now this is really after the TNA because you could use this as a development log tool. Have I built that bit of training? I've also got a scoring system that I really like to use, which is out of 3. So you can score 1, 2, or 3. And it's frequency and impact. So for instance, if I look at creating a debit note, I've scored the frequency as a maximum of 3. So this means that it's done every single day and probably multiple people. The impact, on the system is a maximum of 3. If we can't produce credit notes every day, the system is not going to work. It's going to be a failure from a training delivery point of view. If I look at a different one, there's a 1-1 there, which is validate Kofax invoices. So this is something that we don't do very often and very few people do it. And the impact is pretty low if we don't do it. Now, the reason for scoring these is if I go back to the summary tab, I've got a little matrix here, which gives me an L-shaped scoring system for my tasks. So when I'm presenting my TNA, I can say, here's the evidence, here's all my tasks for the things that need to be trained. But when I've done my evaluation, I found that the outer red area are the 3s. So if it's a 3-3, it goes in that box. So I've got 23 of them. If it's a 3-2, I've got 9. If it's a 3-1, I've got 11, and so on. So I know when I'm, building my TNA, the ones in red are high scoring. I have to produce training documentation for those. The next layer in is my kind of 2-2s, and 2-1s. So these ones, I should do. And then the very bottom corner is my 1-1s. So these are the things that really we could probably get away with not training and not developing. Now, if I go back, we'll just have a bit of a play around. If I look at my 3-3 column, I've got 23 of them. If I go back to my tasks and I change this one to 3-3, then go back to my summary, can you see it's gone to 24? So it's kind of a dynamic document. So when I'm presenting the TNA and working it out, I can, authoritatively say by filtering here, these are the 3-3s, we must do those. These are the 3-2s and the 2-3s and so on. But do you remember I said you should always communicate things with summaries? You can show this to people and say, well, look, I've got to develop this number of topics as an absolute must do if you want this to work. The pink ones are nice to have. If we don't do it now, we might need to do it later, but if we can do it now, that's great. These ones don't bother with, ignore, or do it as a one-to-one session. So that's how I record the specific tasks, and I associate those with, at this stage, I've made up some course names which I think fit. So that's one way of recording it. The next thing is recording the delegates and the roles and the courses. So I've got another spreadsheet. Let me just open this one. This is called, I've called it course matrix. And again, we've got a summary page. So what we've got underlying this is I've got a page with all my delegates in. I've got a column for each course. So this is your classic, course delegate matrix. So for Brett, I know that Brett has to attend this particular course. And by the look of it, that one there. Yeah, so I'm building my raw data about who needs to attend which course. If I go to my courses tab, I've got a list of my courses, and I've got some Excel functions which work out, there's the duration in hours for each course, there's the count of the delegates, there's the number of hours of training, and if I split that out by 8, we're thinking classrooms here, or live events, then in that case I'm going to have to run 14 of those. So this is the summary data that will feed into the TNA. If I go back here, this is where I identify for the courses which roles associated with those courses. And again, I've got counters along the bottom and down the side, so I can see. Yeah. Okay, so again, that's raw data. You want to be, communicating the summary outcomes, basically how many courses you need to run. If anybody questions about how you got to that data, then you just come back here and start filtering, and then you can show the counts and the data. Next thing, create a high-level course description for each course. And it could be very, very simple. I'll show you an example. There's one, a course description for a general ledger course. Anthony, is that coming out?
It is, yeah.
Yeah, great, thank you. So it's got a very big heading, but when you actually go into it, there's not much there. We've got aims and objectives, and really importantly, we've got the audience, which is the roles that I've got in my spreadsheet, which I've come up with from doing my analysis. We've got the duration, delivery method, and also evaluation. How are we going to evaluate it? So that's a decision you'll have to make, as part of your TNA. So for every course, I would have a high-level description that you could email to people, for review and get them to check it. So the purpose is to describe at a high level. Okay, it's not detailing topic by topic exactly what the deliverables are. I think that's your training catalogue, which you would probably start after the TNA is signed off. Yeah, so it's not the same as the TNA. Have your TNA reviewed. So you should already have recruited your team of reviewers. Update your summary document before the meeting. And I found it useful to invite the reviewers to a meeting and sit there, put it on a big screen and go through it and get them to check it as you go. Gives you a chance to, fight with your data, explain why you've come to certain recommendations and decisions. So I want to have a quick look at a more complete document. So I think I showed you the blank TNA with the headings beforehand. I'm going to go and just have a look for a more finished one. Yeah, again, I've tried to anonymize this. So I've called it SCL, which is my company. So yeah, let's just work away. So I've filled in some of these blanks. So in this made up kind of example, it details, the date, project team began to create a shared service center. This is basically why we're doing this. Current situation, we're in the middle of implementing the system. and a UAT system has been created, but a training instance is not yet available. Key objectives, initial perspective from the client. So a number of the managers, team leaders expressed a preference for classroom training supported by e-learning. That doesn't mean that that's what they're going to get. All we're doing is recording what their preference is. Sequence, so it's planned to go live with GL, then procurement and AP, payables will follow on a second phase. So that has a big impact on your TNA because you are going to end up doing 2 lots of training potentially. So we've got timing. How will you know the training has been successful? So again, that will be your client will have their own ideas about how we're going to do that. It could be that you test the delegates. Key people, I've got their names in. Outcomes, if the training's not done. So incorrect usage of the system, unnecessary mistakes, could be a financial impact. Other activities which may impact the project. Expectations. And then we've got the roles and resources. So current status, wide spectrum of employees and knowledge, which is due to the fact that a lot of recruitment is occurring. Some of the employees have used Oracle before, some haven't, so we've got a mixture. So I would, in the TNA, identify the roles that I found, and then the count of the delegates. Okay, so that's really simple and clear. You know, it's that many people. Integration with the HR skills matrix. One trick to miss is that the HR team may have a lot of this information already, and they may want to be updated with these new roles that you've come up with. Now, these are system roles rather than business specific roles, but that may be something they can add to their HR skills matrix and then assess people on, and that may actually help with their career progression. So I would reach out to the HR people and see if that can be integrated. Make sure you tell in the TNA what the out of scope requirements are. So that could be a red flag to someone that they're missing out on something, and then they can shout out about it. Available resources. This is something I found really useful, and it's a thing that you may forget to ask. Have we got any training materials already? One client I'd worked with, they'd already gone live. Training was a disaster. All the employees were very unhappy and were not using the system. So this was a second go. So there were actually desk manuals in Word that had already been created. You know, and if they're there, find out what they are, see if they're any good, see if you can reuse them. Process guides, training material, detail specifically what you've managed to find. Learning management system. Again, if you're doing any e-learning or you want to record feedback from users or testing or present your materials using an LMS, they may already have an LMS in place. You know, find out about it, find out who the key people are, whether we can use it or not, and timelines around that. Evaluation, it's really important to detail this. Quite a lot of companies, to be perfectly honest, are not that interested. They put people on courses, and the fact that you turned up means they're happy. Other companies like financial institutions, it's essential because they're talking to clients on the phone that they're tested, and we can audit the fact that they've passed a test to say that they can give information out to clients. So you need to find out, you know, what's the answer in the TNA. Task analysis. So I use this word task. You can call it whatever you like, topic, you know, whatever, however you want to word it, however the client is going to respond best to it. But give them the high-level summary and show them, you know, it's these many tasks that we need to do, and maybe as a separate document, you know, tell them what those tasks are. So documents to check off that you've done. Summary Word document, you know, that's the one I've just shown you. That's where you're constantly adding information as you gather it, but at a summary level. Task matrix spreadsheet, So this is where we're detailing for each course, what are the key learning points. I call them tasks, call them whatever you need to. Course matrix spreadsheet. So this is our delegates, roles, and courses. Now the output from that is how many delegates have we got on which courses? How many courses do we need to run? Course description Word documents, keep it light at a high level, just so people get an idea of what the courses are. And summarize your findings. So you need to build a conclusion. Now, just before we get to the conclusion, I said that I'd show you a kind of a more detailed example. So there is a file which I'll send to you. There's a PC version, there's an Apple Mac version because I'm on an Apple Mac, and there's a blank version. If I open up the Mac version, I hope it's going to work. It's got some macros in it. This is a finished example, and it's very complicated. And I have to admit, I did not write this. Okay, I got it, used it, and I've kind of kept using it. So we've got lots of ways of recording the data. We've got process area, you know, product number, we've got a description, a product name, navigation, we've got who the designer is, classroom, e-learning, job aid, we've got codes. So if we know what we want to do with that, how we're going to deliver it and build it, we can put that in. We've got the number of hours for each thing, and then the count as well. Now, across here, we've got who might be interested in actually going on that by role, not by delegate. So I've got lots of roles, and if we scroll across, this is a very big spreadsheet, split into different Oracle areas. It doesn't have to be Oracle. So the idea is that the output from here is a series of other tabs. So if I click on one of these, this tells me that for, you know, the Fin business unit, I've got these business roles, and I've got these courses which they're going to attend, and there's the duration, and we've got optional or mandatory, different color schemes, and it shows you the amount of time and whether it's e-learning or classroom. Now, the nice thing is, if we go back, if you look at this, for instance, we've got a navigation course there, which is e-learning, and it's an hour and a half. If I go back into the detailed data, I can go in and I can change the duration there, and then I can get it to rebuild all of these training plans for people. So there is a key sequence, Control-Shift-G, which calls all the fancy macros in the back. So if I press that, that seemed a bit too good to be true. Oh, no, it's still thinking about it. If I go to FinBU, yeah, can you see it now? It says 2 hours. I know it's probably a tiny font, but it's recalibrated the whole thing. It's rebuilt all of these tabs. And where I've used this is I can then snapshot this and send it out as a PDF or a JPEG or whatever I want to. I can include it in my TNA summary, you know, and it visually just shows, okay, for that area of the business, these are the job roles, these are the courses, this is exactly how long it's going to take. Yeah. So I'll send you that. It's more complicated, but you get more functionality out of it. So your conclusion should draw on the conversations with the client, the culture, the system restrictions, and the timelines. I often find that presenting more than one outcome to the client works well. Now it may be that you present 3, knowing that really one of them is the winner, okay? But you're providing the client with an illusion of choice, okay? But it gives them something to compare and contrast to. So I've just, through experience now, I always give them 2 or 3 options. I'll know which one is the best fit, or I think is the best fit. 2 of them might be impractical, because they're too costly, for instance, you know, or it would take too long to do, or whatever reason, logistically, it's not going to work. But you need to let them, you know, make that decision and give you feedback on it. And this may be a good time to sound out the sponsor of the TNA. You know, go right back to the sponsor and say, well, look, these are the 3 things at a very high level I'm suggesting. How do they sound to you? You know, and they'll go, well, I don't like that one. Those 2 are okay. You know, work the costings out, you know, and then you can work from there. So things as outcomes that we might go for are, you know, e-learning only. You know, that might be one solution. So everybody has to do e-learning. It might be classroom only. It might be a blended approach, or it might be something else completely. You know, these are probably the 3 typical things that we'll end up with. Probably blended will be the most common. So there's a bit of classroom and a bit of e-learning. However you present it, you know, those 2 or 3 options need to be reasonably practical, but different enough to make it worthwhile presenting them. So for instance, pros and cons, e-learning, you know, probably cheaper, but the downside might be that if things change quickly, it's costly to go back and edit all that e-learning. You know, you need to be able to talk through the pros and cons. Classroom only, it's a one-off event, you know, for each of those people. Once they're out of the classroom, they've lost it, you know, whereas the e-learning they can always go back to. Blended, you know, that's fashionable at the moment. So you probably preload them with some e-learning, you bring them to an event, or you run an online event, you know, to get them energized into learning that particular subject, but they've got the e-learning to go back to. Or it could be a completely different solution. It all depends on what, you know, comes out of your TNA. So if I go back to my TNA summary, I've got a conclusion section, which might have, you know, 1 or more recommended approaches. And then you can detail, you know, how you're going to go about doing that. So you might detail, you know, which courses will be e-learning, which will be classroom, and so on. Can I just check, Anthony, is that still coming out? Can you see create specific e-learning topics?
Yes, it is.
Great,
Tom.
thank you. Yeah, so, you know, this screenshot was taken straight out of that spreadsheet. So I'm doing all the hard work building the screenshot, but really it's all in the Excel spreadsheet. And this is where I was saying, if you're presenting, you know, at board level, they want to see things like this, but they will pin you, especially if they're grumpy on that day. They'll pin you and say, well, how did you get 114? There aren't, you know, 114 people in finance. And you can say, well, yes, there are. You know, here's their names. Here's the list of them in the spreadsheet. Required resources. You need to work out in your TNA how you could go about delivering it for that particular conclusion. So in this case, I'm saying I need 4 trainers to do this. You know, that's my conclusion. Talk about the LMS, talk about the delegates, training rooms, the Oracle instance, if it's an Oracle implementation, and then timelines. This gets tricky because I did a TNA for an oil and gas client, and I said, it's going to take me 53 days to develop the training and deliver it. And the guy liked the TNA, he was happy. And then I got the contract from the agency and it had 53 days on it, which in the real world is not going to work, you know, because things happen. It's probably going to take longer. But I said 53 days, and that's what he was willing to pay for. So you've got to be careful with these things. But that gives really good information to people. If you say it's going to take 10 days to develop something, you need to be able to justify why and, you know, what fills those 10 days. I also like to just have some sentences at the end with a big picture recommendations, you know, to give more kind of detail and more information about what supports my recommendation. So in that example, I've only got one conclusion. I recommend you do 2 or 3. Slice it up different ways, different mixtures of e-learning and classroom. Present your TNA. I generally do this via PowerPoint. And if you're in a room, or a meeting, you can present it, put it on a big screen or project it like this. It should contain the key facts, roles, delegate numbers, courses, task matrix, estimates for development time, conclusions and recommendations. So I've got an example again, which I'll send out to you. There's my training needs analysis. And basically it's very plain, but it covers every section that was in my summary document with screenshots. It's the same information, but it's just in a PowerPoint pack. Yeah, and sometimes that's an easier way of actually communicating it. And possibly costings. Not every client asks you to do the costings. Most don't. But what they do want to know is number of days development time, number of classroom days. If it's a call center and you expect people to do e-learning, they're going to want to know exactly how many minutes, not just hours, but minutes that training is going to take, because it pulls them away from the phones and they're not answering their clients. So that's something that you may have to work into shift patterns as well. When are the downtimes? When's the quiet time in the call center? That's the time when we should be getting them to do their e-learning. All of these things can go into your presentation. So a quick kind of recap summary, understand what the overall objectives are, speak to the sponsor, create your templates, get the push from the sponsor down into the business to say you're going to be doing the TNA, build a review team, ask your questions and gather your information, record everything in templates. I know it sounds really boring, but having been bitten where I thought I could remember things and I haven't, I just document everything now. Then review the TNA. Have that cycle of reviewing and updating your records in your templates, in your spreadsheets and in your summary document. Summarize your findings, review it, go back, fix it, update it, make sure it's right, go all the way around that cycle again and again, and until you actually present your findings to the sponsor and any key stakeholders. So key things that I found, data is crucial. If you say, I need my call center staff to have 4.5 hours to do this training, that doesn't sound a lot, but in a call center, that's a massive amount. If you can't prove why and how many, and maybe down to the topic level, how long each thing is going to take, then you're going to come unstuck. People reject it. They don't want their staff away from the phones for 4.5 hours. They really don't. So yeah, you need to be able to justify everything with your data. In your spreadsheets, again, you're probably all super gurus, much better than me on Excel. But if you build drop downs, then you can do filters. So if I'm only interested in, a particular course, let's say, that course there, then I'll get, the tasks that are related to that course. That might help you build your course descriptions, or you could email that back out to your reviewers. Using filters in Excel just makes life easy, but it only works if you've got good data. Yeah. And we're just about done. God, that went really quick. I tried to talk fast, which I tend to do on these things, and I didn't really give you that many opportunities to ask questions. I'm very happy to hang around if anybody's got questions. What I'll do post-event is I'll email you all of these templates, all of the documents, and they might be useful, they might not. You might do things a completely different way, if all you picked up from today's event is that you do things systematically, then you're on a winner. You know, your system, your questions, your way of recording the results might be different, but that's a key thing. I don't know who created that fancy spreadsheet. I'd love to be able to credit them. It's from 2005, so it's almost 20 years old, but I still use it. Videos, if you watched any of my videos that I was promoting the event for, that was done with Powtoon. I got someone to review the material that I'm using today, Fernando. My colleague Jackie Wright taught me a course years ago on Gagne's Conditions of Learning, which I like and I use. And this weirdly coloured slide pack I got from Slide Carnival. So I'd like to thank you for your attention. I know it's a lot to kind of take in, and me rabbiting away for an hour, to me, it feels like it's evaporated. You know, it feels like 10 minutes to me. It might feel like 5 hours to you, I don't know. But I'll officially kind of close the event. I'll stay online. Thank you very much for your attention. I hope it's been useful. Always available to answer questions, get involved, you know, just contact me. There's some links here to Gagne's 9 Steps and also Powtoon, but I'll email out all of the documents, and I'll stop talking for a bit now and leave it to you if you want to say hello or ask questions. If not, the event's all done. Thanks for attending.
Oh, can I jump in?
Yes, absolutely.
Just a couple of comments. First of all, Roland sends his apologies.
All right, okay, thank you.
You mentioned the documents.
Yes.
One document that you didn't mention, but is likely to be produced on a project by another team, is a change impact analysis.
Yes, that's a really good point. Yeah,
that will give a lot of good information on the training needs. The other thing I picked up on your spreadsheet, you had all the delegate names.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you will get pushback on a project, especially if the go live date is 6 months, 9 months, 12 months away.
Yeah.
You'll not get the delegate names readily, but what you need to get is the numbers. And you did pick out on the numbers.
That's a good point, because I guess you could put in, you know, receivables analyst 1, receivables analyst 2, you know, and fill in the names as you get closer. If you know that there are going to be 14 people in the team, that would work, wouldn't it? Yeah, good point. Yeah.
And I don't know if you've been picking up on the chat messages, but there was a couple of questions that came in. Arena had a couple of questions coming up there.
Oh, I'm sorry, Irina. I didn't see the chat window. Sorry about that.
No worries. I didn't want to interrupt you. You were on such a wonderful pace, and I didn't want to break your concentration. And I knew there was going to be an opportunity at the end for all of these questions. I've got lots of questions all the time. So just to go to the beginning where you were talking about appointing a review team, I was wondering if this is you're referring to the SMEs that review the content, but then you kind of answer that talking about business analysts, project managers, and I suppose you meant SMEs as well. Yes. Would you also go down to user level to ask for their input?
Yeah, it depends. I've done that, and in fact, myself and Anthony, who's on the call, we worked for a financial institution, and I did a small TNA for them around a Microsoft update, and I did go and talk to people in the field, because part of their training was they had to use a spreadsheet to do a mortgage calculation, and it was a very, very simple spreadsheet. And when I actually spoke to the people in the field, they knew nothing about Excel, and that's the only thing they did. They would fill a number in, press a button on the spreadsheet, and it gave them the answer. So me teaching them, you know, how to do fancy formulas or any new features in Excel, complete waste of time. And I don't think I would have got that unless I'd spoken to the people actually doing the job. So yeah, I do. I think it is a very valuable thing to do. You can't speak to everybody because the sheer volume of people, but I would cherry pick people doing different roles and actually get the real, background on what they're actually doing day to day.
Would you utilize some sort of questionnaire or survey to give to the managers, to give to their staff, if you want to delve more into their digital literacy skills and things like that?
One thing I avoid is getting information secondhand.
Yeah.
Because if it's going through the manager, the employees might tell you what they think the manager wants them to say.
Yeah.
So I tend to go to their desk and sit with them, or if I can get time with them away from the desk, even better. But I tend to try and keep it one-to-one to try and get their real answers. And I would assure them as well, that what they tell me, I'm just gathering general information and I won't hold them to it, or name names as well. And culturally, it does depend on the client. For instance, I was teaching a course this morning, and it was in the Indian subcontinent. Now, I was at home in Hartlepool, but I got up at 6 to teach a course, and it was a mixture of managers and employees. And none of the employees ever asked a question. And they culturally, I think they didn't want to put their bosses on the spot, or me on the spot. And they just wouldn't ask a question. So sometimes they need an environment where they've got the permission to do it. And a one-to-one, can work better in situations like that.
Or you could instigate an anonymous survey.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
that could be done up ahead of time and people have chance to sort of think about things. So rather than face somebody
Yeah.
one-on-one,
yeah,
a well-structured survey that remains anonymous, guarantee
Yeah.
that it's anonymous.
yeah.
People can be forthright and a little bit more free.
Yeah, and there's lots of absolutely free mechanisms for doing that. Like SurveyMonkey.
SurveyMonkey, yeah.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Yeah, it's a good point. Yeah, you could definitely do it that way.
Yeah.
Tom, it's sorry, go on, Irina.
Oh, no, by all means, please go ahead.
Hi, Tom, it's Matt here.
Hi, Matt.
Hi, how are you?
Good.
Great session, and really enjoyed it. I was going to say a number of questions that came out, just what Irina there said, and I think it was Ian. A number of those are stuff that you probably would find useful if you worked closely with a change team, because they almost always seem to boil down to the people aspects of the learning culture and what's available, and how when you do your what you would call a discovery at the initial stage, to say this is what's going to happen, or this is expose the gaps that need covering with training. Working with a change team who would already have a feedback cycle, wherein they're already in with the users, they're getting information. If you pass on in a change workshop information about what the training is going to be like, we can already immediately get feedback from their teams, and just use that sort of change team spoke to sort of tie down a number of those areas that some people have suggested just now.
Yeah.
I think that's always useful.
Yeah, no, it's very good. Yeah, good suggestion.
The other important thing for me that I wanted to sort of add in there is, would you also include anything around accessibility in your TNA? Yeah.
That's a really good question, and I've not really thought about it. But again, it depends on the organization, doesn't it? How much adherence they've got to that, or awareness of it. It is a really good point, though.
I think it's a good opportunity if the organization is not aware to make them aware that it is a legal requirement for them to provide training and access to the systems to people that may have a disability. And not just that, disability is not just for, accessibility is not just for people with a disability, but it could be for every one of us. For example, I wear glasses. I don't think of it as a disability. It's just that we're growing old. All of us will need to see bigger text, a louder volume, being able to stop and start videos, and all of that jazz, as it were. So I think I've come across people in previous organizations who were deaf or blind, who needed a personal assistant to help them, who had screen readers, etc., etc. So that could be another aspect that I think we need to be aware of.
No, good point.
I think, Tom, you touched on, the technology restrictions, and we take it for granted maybe in the Western hemisphere that our internet is very reliable and we're able to, stream at a high rate. But if a company is global and they have people in not so accessible locations, that could be a major hiccup as far as delivering content of any sort. Well, so it's on top of what Irina is just saying, is that it's not just for, making sure that people with disabilities are accessible, but the technology needs to be taken into account as well.
Well, myself and Anthony, who's on the call, we worked for a financial organisation, well known, in Yorkshire, and their network was absolutely abysmal. It was terrible, and it was not going to change. It's absolutely right. It's not just people at home with poor connections. Companies, can sometimes take a long time to catch up.
And it's not LBS.
No, no, not Leeds Building Society.
No, we've just got shiny new officers with all the really good technology. So, but it's like another world for me, definitely. But I know what you mean, Tom. And they're global as well. Who you are talking about.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Tom, it may be more appropriate for some of that information to be in the training plan rather than the training needs analysis.
Yeah.
The training needs analysis is really what you're going to train and who you're going to train. Is just setting up the background, and that information then falls into the training plan, which would then cover the how. The how part of it. And I don't know if you've noticed, but Ben's got his hand up.
Sorry, I didn't. Do you know who Ben Maguire is? That's my 10-year-old son. He wanted to be on the call today to listen in. So I don't know if he's still on there now. Ben, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can.
Oh, well done.
I've got a question.
Fire away.
Okay, if you had limited time to build a TNA, what 3 things would you prioritise?
That is an excellent question for a 10-year-old. I
was going to ask a similar question. I was just waiting for him to, it just took right out of him. I mean, that's a pretty good question.
Yeah, it is.
Move over, Tom. You're no longer required.
No, that's right. And well, I mean, I've done TNAs under pressure. I've done TNAs where I'm only getting paid to do the TNA in a specific number of days, and I have to do the TNA, summarize it, come up with conclusions, and deliver it, and hopefully get it signed off. I've done that a few times before. So key things to me are to really understand what the scope and the objectives are right at the beginning from the sponsor, because you can go down paths that actually you find, no, that's not relevant to the TNA, and you've wasted a whole day. So be absolutely crystal clear about the objectives at the beginning. The example I gave earlier where I was doing a finance TNA and I ended up talking to someone who wanted HR training, and that took me a while to untangle that. So be very, very clear and specific about the objectives. I would also, I know I keep going on about it in the slide pack, have your plan about how you're going to record the information. I've made mistakes before where I've met 6 people in a day, and by the time I've got to the 4th one, I can't remember what the first one said. I just can't. So have a plan about how you're going to record things before you ask the questions, and make sure that you can do a summary. Because like I was saying earlier, you've got to be able to present at a high level with the summary numbers. So make sure you've got some kind of mechanism for doing that. And don't waste time talking to the wrong people. Yeah, Matt, you've got your hand up.
Yes, so it's just to expand on that particular question, because I was going to ask sort of like a similar question. My question, Tom, is in the event that you, because as we all know, in programs and projects, sometimes you may not necessarily have a separate training team or training supplier, if you like, come in and do training. If you are a project manager or a business manager or business analyst or a program manager or even a change manager, and you have to do that, do the training needs analysis now, and you wouldn't be able to, you don't have the bandwidth to sort of go through the entire suite of steps that you've outlined. What are the methods you want to use to just do a streamline, or say a smaller version of essentially what you've just shared today?
Yeah, I mean, one way of doing it is before you interview people, you find out from the business, you know, what we think the key roles are and the tasks within those roles. Document that and then send it to the people in the business for review. So you've kind of you've got the answer already. It might be right or wrong, but they're looking at it and doing, you know, their own analysis on it and working out what they think's missing, what's irrelevant, what's incorrect. You know, that could save a bit of time. You can get information like that from the project team, because they will have, if they've documented it, you know, a role and function kind of matrix. So you could hive off that, which will give you a pretty good clue, you know, about what the business roles are and the tasks that are involved in those business roles. So you could kind of present it to the people in the business and then get them to correct it or make comments on it. You know, that might be quicker. Yeah, you're always under time pressure though, definitely.
Correct. If you're undertaking the actual training tasks and you expect, and you're, you know, I mean, most of the time you're leading an effort, you're looking for a budget to recruit resources that are specific to the areas that you need.
Yeah.
But sometimes you don't get those, and it's something you probably have to do yourselves also. And the idea is just, you know, how do you do it quickly without going into the sort of detail that the likes of yourselves, who are experts in the field, would do. Yeah,
I mean, key things that your deliverables are, you know, how many people have I got? What courses at a high level need to be taught? What's an estimate of how long each one takes to teach? You know, and that then gives you how many classrooms you need, how many trainers you need from there. Those are kind of the key numbers. I mean, it's an interesting question, because one drift that I found over the last 5 years is that job roles for freelancers coming up, they tend to have a mixture of tasks in them. So there was one that came out a few weeks ago. Someone took the job, bailed, and it's resurfaced again, where you were the trainer, the change management person, and the tester on a project. You had to do all three, you know, and it's crazy.
And the communications manager. I mean, it's a...
Yeah. So I find, compared to when I first started freelancing, you can't just do the one thing typically now. You have to be flexible and willing to get involved. And, you know, for me, definitely, you know, doing some testing, and I quite enjoy that. I don't mind doing it. I don't mind writing test scripts. I prefer to be in the classroom training. but it's just part of the job now. I think you get roped into it. So yeah, and what it means though probably is that across the board, most people are not brilliant at one thing. They're okay at most things. It's a real shame. But that's just the trend at the moment. It seems to be how it is. Yeah.
Are you seeing much use of things like Oracle guided learning, things like that, in coming into training, or a request for that?
Yeah, well, I've seen a demo of Oracle guided learning, and there are other tools out there like WalkMe, you know, and other competitors. And in fact, I've done a previous webinar on exactly that subject. And we had someone, a third-party person, come in and do a presentation on WalkMe. I've seen it. I think it's pretty good, but a mistake that I've seen made is that people in the business might think it's a replacement for training. And where that can go wrong is if, let's say it's procurement, you know, Oracle guided learning could work really well in procurement, you know, for creating a requisition, you know, a purchase order, whatever it might be. But on its own, it's probably not enough, because it doesn't show you the whole process flow. It doesn't say what the impact of getting things wrong is, you know, and if you fill this field in incorrectly, you know, it's going to create an impact down the flow. I don't think it's quite so good at that. So I don't think it's a replacement for training. I think you still need something, and training might be, you know, communications. It might be a piece of early learning. It doesn't need to be face-to-face. But I think stuff like Oracle guided learning, WalkMe, on its own, I still don't think it's enough. That's my opinion though.
There's also the concept of actually understanding what the software or the system actually does, getting that mental model of that system into people's heads.
Yeah.
There was one occasion when I was at a client where they introduced SharePoint to replace Lotus Notes, but did no training on SharePoint whatsoever.
Wow.
The people were coming up with new SharePoint applications and nobody knew how to use it. They couldn't understand what SharePoint was trying to do because it was a completely different mental model.
Yeah.
And that type of training that is often required that is forgotten about.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. And unfortunately, the people who sell these products, these solutions, they'll sell it on that you're cutting your costs. You know, you don't need training anymore because it will guide you through.
Except for me.
Yeah, I don't
think the prices of those.
Yeah, it's definitely not there yet.
Times have you seen data that's just been entered just to make things fit, you know, so it's garbage in, garbage out. So as you say, if the person does not know the implication of data point A, data point B, they'll make things happen just so they can move forward.
Correct.
And then you'll just get, you know, just gibberish.
Yeah. Yeah.
Tom, the thing with packages like WalkMe, UPK, as it was, they all act as a form of learning, the simulation. The big difference, Ralph, that I've seen that or was shown with guided learning is it's an overlay on the live system.
Yeah.
So as you go through a process, and this was Oracle, one of the directors from Oracle who took us through it a couple of years ago. As you go through the process, for example, if you want to find out how to terminate an individual, and you just happen to use the chief exec as your example, by the time you finish the example in guided learning, you've terminated the chief exec for real.
Yes.
Might not be a bad thing.
No. Yeah, I was going to say it was good to have its advantages.
Arena came up with another question, Tom, about would you include who will be responsible for the upkeep of learning, as that would factor into costs. I would come back on that one saying, don't put that into the TNA. That would be part of the training plan.
Yeah, I think so. It is a good question. I was talking to a client today who rang me, and they just wanted to get my opinion on, they wanted a new LMS. and, you know, what did I think of current LMSs? And we had a chat about that. But the reason they were doing it was that they've actually already got an LMS and it works and it's fine. But it is cobbled together by one person in the company. And they realized that although it works great, if this guy leaves, especially if he left with, you know, no notice, they're absolutely flummoxed. You know, they've got no documentation. It's a Moodle system, which is a free LMS system, but it's, you know, fantastically configurable, and you can include bits of codes from here, you know, here, there, and everywhere, and it's fantastic. But they decided, although it worked fine, they're going to have to replace it with a commercial application, you know, because they couldn't afford the risk. So yeah, I think you're right. It would go more into the plan, but it is something to consider.
Just a quick question, Tom, here. You mentioned about the task list. So is my understanding correct that most of your data would come from the project team, that is your business analyst or testing team, rather than the kind of the business per se, as in the end users or their managers?
Yeah, it's definitely a good driver for you to get information from them. But I would say you need to check this out with the managers in the business as well, because there could be things that you're not expecting that they actually have to do. You know, for instance, it may be that the task that you identify is matching invoices manually, because the system will only do so many automatically, and that would be a task. But in reality, if you go and speak to the you know, payments manager or whoever it is, they might say, well actually the scanning fails 4% of the time, and we have to manually go in before we even get to the matching stage, you know, and fix the image and match this field to this, and then we run it through the matching software. So you've missed a trick that actually there's a manual task in there. So yeah, I would take it as a fantastic resource. It's a really good starting point, especially if the test scripts are good and up to date and, you know, comprehensive. But it may not be absolutely everything. I'd still go out and talk to the business.
Perfect, thank you.
Any more? Well, I tell you what, we're at 8:30, so we're half an hour over anyway. I can just see Ralph there. Hello, Ralph. Nice to see you again. Yeah, well, what I'll do is I'll close the course down now. I've really enjoyed meeting you all. I know it was a very fast pace. I hope it's been useful. I'm going to look at all the documents. I'll put the PowerPoint presentation in as well, if it's any use to anybody. If it ends up being a really big set of files, I haven't looked at the sizes yet, what I might do is use a third-party company to send you the zip file. So I'll communicate that out in case it goes into your junk bin or whatever. So I might need to do that. So I'll send you an email warning you that you'll get a link. But I'll close it there. Thanks very much for your attention. It's lovely to see so many people turn up for these things. It's fantastic. Really enjoyed meeting you all, and I hope it's been useful.
Indeed. Thanks
Very
very
good.
much.
Great, thanks, Tom.
Okay, bye everybody.
Okay.
Right.
Great.
Bye.
Thanks, Tom.
Take care.
Bye, Ben.
Bye,
Bye.
Ben.
Thanks for your question, Ben. That was brilliant.
I know. I was listening all the way through.
I know. You did a really good job.